Welcome to Our Family Stories, a podcast started by Global Peace Women. We started this podcast with the hopes that as we share our family stories, the good times and the bad times, we can begin to see through a collective knowledge how we can build peace in the home. In today's episode, we will be talking about the values of how to build that peace. We hope you enjoy. So we're super happy to have this next episode with a remarkable woman from our International Advisory Council and from the United States. This episode, we will be talking about the values that she has identified or that we have identified as important to raising healthy and happy families. So maybe we'll uncover the secret sauce to that, or maybe we won't, but let's see.
Hi, I am Rachel Murray, and I am a wife of my wonderful husband for 32 years going on this year. And I have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. And not only am I that, but I also have my responsibilities. I work outside of the home, and then also am very involved with my husband. We're pastoring. We've been pastoring for 20 years this year, and we have been in the ministry for 30 years. So we are celebrating that this year. And so that's wonderful. But I also have a volunteer, and I'm also a part of, I'm the director of Global Peace Women USA, and also a part of the International Advisory Council. So a lot of titles, but that's okay. Titles are titles.
They express how much you love. Gotta reach everywhere. Shraddha.
Hi everyone, my name is Shraddha. I am currently working as a social media analyst for Global Peace Women, and I help share the stories that Hanako and Mrs. Murray and all of our past leaders have come on and shared on social media.
Great. And I'm Hanako. I work with the communications of Global Peace Women, and I guess I have a lot of hats, but the hat that I'm most proud of is the 4 children that I have. We're still in the raising process. I haven't gotten to the 7 grandchildren yet. and there are days where we are falling apart, but we fall apart together and we learn together. So it is the most challenging but most fulfilling area of my life. We cry and we laugh a lot. So that's me. Like I said, today we will talk about what are some of those values that we need to invest in as a family to ensure that even though things are hard or things are good, we are moving towards becoming healthy, happy, but also contributing families to our communities and our world. So as a tradition of our Family Stories podcast, I have a lovely story from before that we would like to share to stimulate some of our own stories. So this one is from Nepal, from Shraddha's home country. Let's see. It's really cute. That one's cute. But I saw a couple of values in there. But that doesn't mean we have to have those in particular. I saw humility, I saw gratitude, I saw grit. But yeah, let's talk about some of these values that we found as important.
I think humility, when you're looking at humility, you know, it's one thing to, of course, we had a cute little thing where we would say, you know, my dad would always say to us, well, you know, he'd say something about to the fact of, you know, I've got great children, or, you know, and we would go, oh, of course, that's me. And he'd be like, well, there's no humility in our family. You know, it's like, no, that's not the humility I'm talking about. But it's more or less of just, it's that just not always wanting to, you don't always have to have the spotlight. It's that humbleness of just saying, you know, I'm in it for the long haul, and I don't have to, you know, I can be behind the scenes and helping out. You know, when we talk about the grit, you know, it's getting down and dirty and really working things out. And yeah, there are times when you're going to argue and fuss and fight or whatever within the family. You know, I know growing up, that was, you know, my mom always said, well, you know, if you pick on one another, you must love them really a lot. You know, it's like, I mean, she said that to my brother several times, you know, she's like, well, she said, you keep on picking on your sisters, that means that you really love them. And he's like, I don't love them. And so then he stopped for 30 seconds, and then it was back up again. So it was like, okay, so we tease him to that day. And you know, I look at it, you know, in the fun things and things like that, even with my children and grandchildren, and listening to, you know, the ones that are in, you know, my daughter's kids. She's the one that's got most of the kids. So you hear it more, you know, you hear the fighting and the bickering and the back and forth, but when it all, you know, when the rubber meets the road, as we say, it's knowing that no matter what, doesn't matter what's happened in your life, your family is there to support you. And not all people have that. And so, you know, I'm blessed to be able to have that within my family. And then, you know, within our children, you know, as, and I think probably something that can be difficult is, you know, as your children begin to get their own families, and, you know, they tend to go on their own path, and there may be different things that, you know, come into play, or different things that happen along the way that, you know, one might say, oh, my sister and my brother, they just really irritate me. And it's like, yeah, but they're still your brother and your sister. You still got to love them, you know? And so, and even that happens as children grow older and they have their own families. So how is it as me, as a parent to my children, you know, I want to be able to say, just because you might not agree with your sister or your brother doesn't mean that you push them aside, because your family is your family. And I don't want to ever have the bridge burnt to where there's no way of getting back over. You know, we each have responsibilities that, you know, we need to embrace the opportunities to be able to help one another. You know, and just having that good sportsmanship, you know, there's a lot of
I think what would that value be called? Good sportsmanship is a good title for that. Learning how to play with lots of different kinds of team members.
Yeah.
And shaking hands even when you lost, or even if you got hurt.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, I think too, I mean, I know as my children, as they were growing and things like that. And when, you know, I mean, as parents, you know, when your kids go at each other, or when something happens, you know, what do you normally do? You're like, you got to make up. So everyone does different things. I've heard different stories of how parents have made their kids make up, or, my thing was like, no, you've got to give your brother or your sister a hug. Tell them that you love them and that you're sorry, and then let's move forward. And sometimes that is probably, the hardest thing for kids to do is to say, I'm sorry. As adults, how often is it, to say, I'm sorry. And I think in order for the children to be able to say that, we as parents and grandparents have to show that there are times when we make mistakes, and what's the thing that we're going to do? We're going to say, I'm sorry, I've made a mistake. Mom or Mimi has, really messed up this time, man. I've really messed up, please forgive me. But I think that's very important, is to make sure that you have that communication, to be able to say that, and to be able to show the honesty and the humility. That's where the humility comes in too. Is
out of my mouth, honesty and humility, right? To be able to apologize like that takes both honesty and humility.
Yeah.
And what better place to learn than in the family, where they keep you super honest.
That's so true.
I will say, even though I have a 9-year age gap, and I'm an adult, and my brother is still a teenager, I still struggle from time to time just to apologize first. And that dynamic, I feel like, will always be there, and it'll always be my mom who will say, like, no, you have to make up. It's gone on long enough. I don't want to see it anymore. Do what you need to do.
Well, forgiveness, and I know, as far as, my upbringing and even my teaching with my children, is that, in believe in the scriptures, it says to forgive. How many times do I forgive? 70 times 7. That's a day. So 70 times 7, that's a lot of forgiveness. So it's like, that's every day. So, there has to be something where you're saying, okay, I've got to learn to forgive, but not only just forgiving, but it's also moving forward and not always bringing that up in the past. And I think that's very important in families, and as you're training your children, and as you're training, you get to the grandchildren stage, is, of course, grandkids are way better than children. That's what I was told before by my parents. And I'm like, how could you say that? I'm your child. You're saying that I'm not as good, but it's so true. It's like, because you can love them, you can spoil them, and then send them home. I love my children dearly, and but we joke about that all the time. But yeah, it's you've got to show that humility and as a parent and as a grandparent. It starts with us. And as it's one of those things where, even, you're 24, and, you as the older sister, the only way sometimes that your brother might learn is just by watching you. And know that, comments can be made, well, I don't, sometimes I wish that my parents would be doing the raising and not me. And it's not so much, and I've actually heard that with my children, in that they've said, Mom, how come you didn't teach us about this? And I'm like, well, because it's our upbringing, because it's like, that was never taught to me when you just didn't, we didn't teach that stuff, or, but it's the generation that we're living in today. Children know so much more than what, as a child, that I even knew, or my parents, it was one of those things, different types of topics. They got, exactly. They have got the access from the computers to you name it. And so, us parents are, and grandparents are like catching up to the, to the new stuff. But I think it's just, I think if we each can look at ourselves and say, how am I representing? And what am I teaching those that look up to me? It might not be my brother or my sister or my child or my grandchild, but there might be another child or mother or somebody outside that looks to me and says, how does she respond, or what is she doing? And so we all have to, keep that in our minds, is that, we're an example to whoever we, interact with.
There was this beautiful story I heard on the radio the other day of a woman who approached a mother in a grocery store. Baby was crying, had a 3-year-old running all over, couldn't get the baby to stop crying. And the woman came up to the other woman and said, "Do you need help?" And without a thought, the woman with the baby just handed the baby over to the other woman. "Yes, I do need help." And then the woman who approached was the older lady, right? So then she knew these things of how to soothe the baby. And the woman with the baby said, "Oh my gosh, can you teach that to me? How do you get the baby? That's what I need, 5 minutes of peace. What can I do? And show me." And then she showed, you need to change the formula because the baby's colicky, and these are some things that you can do. But in that small interaction, the woman with the child revealed, she said, "What you've given me is priceless. There's no way I can pay you back because I never had a mom. And what you just gave me was wisdom that I wish my mother could have given me." So when you talk about the influence that we have on people outside of our families, just by our personal, I guess, values that we hold outside, I was like, wow, if I could one day impact a woman like that or be a lady like that. But it sounds like that firsthand, that just by being available to those who need, you have such a profound impact.
Yeah, I've had, examples. You just gave that example, and I immediately thought of, parents, in our ministry that, for the past 30 years, and then in pastoring or whatever, there have been times, I love babies. I love children. I love them to death. And it's one of those things where, I don't know, maybe it's, I think sometimes parents, you mentioned, Hanako, that, there's times when you cry and there's times when, you laugh. But I think, as a child, and I've tried to explain this and try to teach not only my children, but also others, is that child is going to react and going to feel what you're reacting. And so if you're upset and uptight, it's one of those things where the baby is not going to be calm. So when someone else comes to take the child away, and I've done this before, I'm like, "Do you mind if I hold the baby?" "Oh, the baby, they won't stop crying." I'm like, "Just hand them to Mimi. It's okay. I'm a Mimi, hand them to me." And there's just something about, I will sing a song. The song that I normally start off singing is "Yes, Jesus Loves Me." It's very simple, but it's just a small little song that I just sing in the baby's ear as I'm, bouncing or, patting him on the back or something like that. But I think, and people are like, "Oh my goodness, you're like the baby whisperer." And it's like, no, it's not so much the baby whisperer. It's just more or less because I'm not uptight. I'm calm. But it's not easy. Parenting is not easy. And trying to, train them and to give the values that you want to instill, it doesn't always come easy. It doesn't,
But I love what you said about starting with me. I've heard said that, like, when the woman is, when sunny or okay, the sun is shining in the house. When the woman is, when the mom, right? When the mom is having a bad day, it's a thunderstorm in the house. She's the thermostat. barometer of the house situation. It puts into perspective the power we have, but also, right, the influence we have, like that we have the capacity to stay calm. And in that calm, we bring calm to our children, to our home, maybe to those around us. It's empowering, but intimidating at the same time.
The saying is true, is that if mama's happy, then everybody's happy. If mama's not happy, then everyone's not happy. And it's one of those things that, you know, it's not to use that as manipulation, and that should never be used. You know, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, you know, what can I do to make sure that it's not to the point of my children going, oh no, here comes mom. What happened? We're in trouble now, you know. There's a funny little thing, because and I've said this before to my kids, and they'll laugh when things go bad or something like that, or they, you know, something happens. I'll look and I'm like, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out. And they're like, you know, that's when you've gotten so frustrated. You're like, what do? Not that I would ever do that, but and they're like, okay, mom, yep. They're like, okay, mom's not in a good mood. We need to tread lightly.
Go to time out. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
No, I 100% relate. And that's also the moment when the siblings get together and they're like, oh, what can we do? Like, should we do this? Should we do that? Or even it's as simple as she's downstairs, just make sure don't annoy her in any way possible. And this usually happens even if you're into a fight with your sibling. At that moment, you reunite, and then everything is just
help mom.
Yeah.
You're reuniting.
I mean, even on a bright sunny day, if she's unhappy, it just turns gloomy. It's dark, and we're like, oh no, what do we do now?
Yeah, and that's all about and I think that's just a natural, normal thing. I've seen that in our children. There's been many times, just, you know, and it's not so much that they've done something to, you know, kind of create the chaos in the house. It could be from anything. It could be from work, or it could be from something else, or, you know, being in the ministry, you know, when you have, you know, other people's problems that you know, you're having to try to help somebody else. You know, sometimes a lot of pressure just is built up. And I think, you know, that's the one thing that, you know, that we have really tried to show our kids, is that yes, that you're going to have those times. And so when you become a parent, you're going to have those times yourself. But how do you move out of it? And how do you show your children that it's okay to have bad days? It's okay to, you know, to be upset. It's okay to, when everything seems like it's falling in on you, what is it that you can do, and how do you pull yourself out, and showing them techniques or different things, and then coming back to the children, you know, after that, the siblings have all got together and been like, let's go help mom, or, you know, let's go pick her some flowers or something, you know, and that I've had that where, you know, my son or you know, has done that. And I know that you know, even at Christmas time or birthday times or whatever, you know, something could happen, and, you know, they would go and wrap up a gift that they had in their closet, you know, and then give it to you and be like, here, mom, just wanted to give you something. And it's like, and you unwrap and you're going, you pulled it out of your closet. And then for them to say, mom, if you'd like me to, I'll hold on to it for you, so that way I can get, it's like something like that. For when your children do something, it's like, it brings you back to reality. And then you sit there and we've done this before. We've pulled them all together and said, look, mom or dad, you know, we've been having a bad day, and I am so sorry that I took it out on you. You know, these are the things that, you know, unfortunately, things happen and mom just, wasn't in the right frame of mind. But it's those little simple things of showing them that, their kindness has brought mom back to my reality of saying, hey, I'm mom. Hello.
I'm guilty. I actually have a few presents stored just in case for those situations.
Emergency mom.
Emergency.
Actually, the thing is, she knows that I have some in my closet or in my room, but she just goes along with it. She's like, okay, like I'll take it.
As mothers, as women, we have a great responsibility. And sometimes that responsibility is overwhelming in some instances, because you're not only, for those that, are married, or those that are in relationships, or even just single, there's other things that encompass and that come around. And it sometimes really, really challenges your values and really challenges you as an individual. And so to have those moments of levity, you really need that. But how do children know that, that you need that? Because, over time they've seen you, maybe offering that support of help, or showing them that, hey, it's okay. When my kids, would come home from school and have, a bad day or whatever, a lot of times, you'd be like, okay, let's go for ice cream, hey, ice cream does it, does the trick. You try to find different things. Now, was I always successful in knowing or validating them when they had a bad day? No, there were times when I missed it. And it's like, but those are the times when it's like, okay, if something was said, well, mom, I had a bad day too. And it's like, oh, it's not about me. It's about you too. But you have to look at the different things in life, and really, I think, really look at what you value the most. And what is it that makes, when your time is done, what is it that, that each one of your, my mom valued me as a person. My mom, she served and she, tried to bring us together and, tried to show that sportsmanship and, she showed respect, but I think it's really, as far as my values are concerned, I believe that from my upbringing and my foundation that has been laid, with my spirituality and with my understanding of, of what the scriptures and really just building upon, knowing that I have a God who cares for me and who loves me. And so, I need to show that kindness and that, and that compassion to others, because it's, I've been given a lot of compassion and, so I think it's important.
Yeah. I think we talked a lot about different values, important ones: humility, honesty, gratitude, grit, sportsmanship, optimism, kindness, compassion. And what you brought up just now, I was thinking, oh, that's an interesting exercise. If we wrote our own obituary pre-mortem, what would be the values that we want to be remembered by? Then we could think, oh, these are the things that I will invest in. These are the types of responses that validate the values I feel are important to me, that I want to make sure that I am reflecting in my behaviors every day. And that will build towards that obituary that I wrote that I can leave to my children. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for the stories that we shared here, and going to ask for parting words or final thoughts. We start with Shraddha again, and then we'll have Mrs. Murray close us out.
Overall, I think it's, again, as Hanako said, all of these values that we go through and experience through our family. It's very important to note that we won't get it right the very first time. It's something that you learn as you go. And that's also a really great factor, because that makes you become who you are in the future. And it at the end of the day, it's not that we intend to be bad people or good people. It's just the experiences that we've learned and that we've gone through help us become who we are today. And the compassion, communication, the grit, all of those things they may not be shared and experienced the same way that one person experiences it through, but overall, we all end up going through something similar, just in different perspectives. That's something that's really important to think about and continue thinking about. But yes.
I love that we're becoming. We're not complete.
Right.
Every day is a becoming journey. Really, very nice. Mrs. Murray, please close us out.
I mean, she just closed us out. It was profound, and just, it was excellent. It makes my heart glad to see a young person who thinks in the way that, that you do. I think that's very, very admirable of you. And I think that your parents have done a great job, and you've learned somewhere. And I think your mom has done a great job on that. I think that, like you said, it's not that you're a bad person or that you're a good person. When you really boil everything down, it's saying, okay, and Hanako, you touched on it, your obituary. And a lot of people don't like to talk about that. But if you look at it, we're not, we don't have the promise of tomorrow. We don't have the promise of the next minute or so. And any one of us could go at any time. And I think when you go through life situations, when you deal with death, when you've dealt with, someone having cancer in your family, you begin to value life and value each other. And it really makes you take a step back and say, is this really worth me getting upset about? Is this really something that I need to worry about? Your life is very important. And if we can make sure that as parents, as mothers, as sisters, aunts, if we can look at our life and say, okay, what is it that I want to be able to pass down to those around me? What is it that I want my children, my grandchildren, to be able to not only say about their mother or their Mimi, but what is it that they can learn and say, okay, if there's something that I can gain from this. I think of my grandmother and just the recent passing. And, I've said, my grandmother didn't have a bitter bone in her body. And if there's one thing, you never heard my grandmother say anything negative about anyone. And how often, have I said something that may have not been, complimentary to another person or about another person? Are there things that I've done that I can change? Yes, we all can change. We have not done things perfectly. I am not perfect, and I don't claim to be perfect or have all the answers on how to raise your children or your grandchildren, how to, do whatever. I don't have all the answers, because there's not all the answers. It's just a learning process. If I can impart some of the things that I've gone through or some of the things that we have experienced, if I can impart some of the things that maybe to go down or the road to take, then I'll impart that and give that advice and give that guidance. But it's really up to each individual to make the choice. And when you make the choice and say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to live each and every day the best that I can, and I'm going to do my best in making sure that my children and my grandchildren know that, number one, my faith in God comes first, and then everything else follows. I want to make sure that I leave them that set of not only just the legacy, but the values of saying, okay, this is what she stood for. And I want to do that.
Thank you. So thank you for your wisdom.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've enjoyed it. And just, if there's some way that I have been able to help at least one, then I feel that I have completed what I feel that, that God has placed me on this earth, is to be able to, if I can minister to one person and to be able to say, here's what I've learned and here's what I've been taught, here's the way that, I've done it, and if there's just a little nugget in there that can help somebody else, then, I really feel that.
A lot today. Mission accomplished. My basket is full today. I hope yours is too, Shraddha.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. Make sure to subscribe and tune in next time.